promised. But every one of them who came along was a candidate to be the Messiah of the one that was promised. And this is why Maimonides says, what happens if he wasn't so successful? So it says, this is not the one that the Torah promised us. Torah promised us there'll be someone that's successful. But he is like all of the other kings of David that are kosher, that died, but God put it there in order to test us, to see if we would be faithful to follow in God's ways, because we really do have to follow the kings and do what they tell us. And that's why we had to follow Bar Kokhba when the Sanhedrin did announce that Bar Kokhba, Simon Bar Kokhba, was the king, Messiah. We didn't know if he would be successful, but because he was a king from the house of David, we had to follow him. But the fact that he wasn't successful was because of his sins. So he was a good man, he was a sincere man, but he's not the one that was promised. As proof that a Messiah who dies, or a king who dies, is not a terrible thing. And furthermore, it's not prohibited to believe that a person who died could once again be the Messiah through resurrection. You only have to look a few lines further in Maimonides' critique of the Christians. Maimonides calls the Christians a great stumbling block. Why are they a stumbling block? So he says as follows: for all the prophets state that Messiah is the Redeemer of Israel who will save them, gather their scatterings, their exiles, and strengthen the commandments. And this person, Jesus, caused Israel to be destroyed by the sword and to scatter their remnants and to humiliate them and to exchange the Torah and to fool most of the world to worship a God outside of the Lord, outside of Hashem. What's missing here? What's missing here is the critique that he caused them to believe also in a dead Messiah, because that's what they do believe in. Why doesn't he criticize them if Messiah cannot be from the dead, and that this is a heresy according to Asher 023 from bejewish.org in his filthy video that Lubavitch has got heresy? If this is such a great critique, as David Berger says in his horrible books, then why doesn't Maimonides right there in the same halacha, chapter 11, halacha 4, criticize the Christians for believing in a dead Messiah? You know what the answer is? Messiah could be from the dead. There are two separate places in the Talmud that state that. So why doesn't Maimonides state that? The answer is Rambam is following the opinion of Samuel that only natural things will come when Messiah comes. And therefore, he doesn't deal with the supernatural. Can the supernatural happen? Yeah, it can happen. It doesn't have to happen. Therefore, we have to assume that nothing supernatural will happen, but Messiah will come. But it's possible that the supernatural will happen. And that's why he doesn't deal with this question. It's only the purpose of the Maimonidean statement here in Halacha 4 is to negate the opinion of Rabbi Hillel, who says only one person can be the Messiah. And if he fails, that's it. And so Maimonides says, no, if he failed, somebody else can be the Messiah. He's not the one that was promised. He's not the one. Therefore, it could be somebody else. Or, if he was a righteous person and didn't sin, it could be him too. As in the case of Daniel, as in the case of many other people, as in the case of King David himself, whom the majority of the rabbis of Israel, right before the end of the conclusion of the Jerusalemite Talmud, the rabbis of Israel concluded that it may be King David himself. And in fact, this was the opinion of Rav Papa when he began to ask Abai his questions in Sanhedrin 98b, but we won't go into that. The opinion of a majority of the rabbis in Israel was that it is possible that King David would be the Messiah himself. King David had been dead by that time 1100 years. So you see, from the Jerusalemite Talmud as well as from the Babylonian Talmud, Messiah could be from the dead. Maimonides does not address that. He does not address supernatural things. And that's the reason for that. And I challenged this Asher to find me where Maimonides says that Messiah cannot be from the dead, as he states, and he tries to impute in Maimonides in this halacha. And I offered him $1,000 to find it for me. He won't, and he won't take me up on it. At any rate, the same goes for Dr. Berger as well, the same $1,000 bet. And all you other interesting people out there, if you have evidence to Rambam, the Rambam says that, be my guest. One of you has asked me, why do I argue with the Rebbe? The Rebbe himself seems to imply that in Halacha 4 of chapter 11. And my answer to you is as follows. Number one, at this point, I'm entitled to my own opinion. Number two, very, very important, Maimonides does not say he cannot be from the dead, and the Rebbe's interpretation of that was not forced and not an error, but rather the Rebbe wanted that there should be no Gimel Tammuz, and Mashiach should be from the living, it should already come. And unfortunately that did not happen, but it was a form of prayer, not a halachic interpretation, not a halachic decision. Some of the Lubavitchers say that that shows you that the Rebbe is not dead, he's still alive, it never happened. Well, you want to be delusional, you can be delusional, be my guest. My opinion is Messiah is whoever God chooses. Could it be the Rebbe? It can be the Rebbe. Mashiach can be from the dead. Will it be somebody who's alive today? Maybe, probably, possibly. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not smart enough. All I say is it's not heresy. And anybody who says it is, and calls it that way, is a liar, an Amoritz, and a Rasha, a wicked person and an ignorant person, because it goes against the Torah and the Talmud. And the only reason why he says that is to bash a group of people who are more religious than him. And that's the truth. And if he can prove me otherwise, the $1,000 bet is there. I'm good for the money. I don't think